Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Startup Stories, where we talk to founders and hear from them in their own voice about that decision to take a step into the unknown, what happened after, and maybe a few pieces of info that you can't find on the internet. Today I'm here with Isambard Poulson. He's the co-founder and CTO of Huq Industries. Welcome, Isambard.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, great to be here. Although we were just saying it would be way better if we were in a local pub sharing a pint for this discussion, but
Yeah,
we
well,
make the best of it.
yeah, exactly. It's the next best thing.
Yeah, great. So why don't you give us the elevator pitch for Huq Industries first, so we know what you're working on, and then we'll go from there.
So Huq Industries is a location analytics platform. We use mobile location data and we build products which are beneficial to a wide variety of sectors, including real estate, retail, local government, and so forth.
Great. And your path there was interesting. I love the fact that you have a background in art. Maybe tell us a little bit about yourself and what led you then to become a founder.
Yeah, so I did my first degree in science. So I did my first degree in chemistry. And following on to that, I became a management consultant, but I always had a really strong interest in the arts and ended up going back to art school and studied at art school for quite a long time. After that, briefly became a professional artist and was working as an art lecturer. For a variety of reasons, though, I started to dabble more and more in tech. I was teaching myself computer science, working as mostly games developer in ad agencies, and gradually my brother and I, Conrad, we got talking about starting various things, spent more and more time together trying to get some things off the ground. So that was really the early story into it, and the more time I spent doing it, the more I essentially learned. So there were some precursors before Huq, and then eventually four of us got together to found Huq, basically.
Now, how do your skills and your brother's compare? Are you a good set of opposites?
I would say we're highly complementary. So
Okay.
yes, so I think that's a really important thing I think in the management of any company, but in early stage companies, is that the founders have highly complementary skill sets. So, I'm strong technically. Conrad has like other strengths to do with fundraising, organisation, etc. So, we have this ability to overlap those skills. So, I think it's very important that people aren't all trying to do the same thing all the time, basically.
Yeah. So with that complementary set of skills, how did you decide that you wanted to found a new company?
I guess it's, for me personally, that was always something I'd wanted to do. The more I worked in more different organisations, I saw, so for a long time I was freelance, doing mobile development principally and games development. And the more I saw more different organisations, the more I became fascinated by the way in which, just by how you organise and treat people, that can be highly transformative. So you can go from a place which is demotivating and unproductive to highly motivating and highly productive just by the way in which you kind of structure that thing and treat those people. So I think for me that was really the human element. Although I work largely in tech, the human element is the thing that I think is really fascinating.
Yeah, this organizational behavior around everything that happens from founding to today. So take us back to that moment when you're starting Huq. How did the idea come about?
Well, we had been working on a previous startup which was to do with recommendation, and one of the things that we had found was that there was really no good mechanism of attribution after those recommendations had been delivered. So we were looking at how can you attribute human visits to actual places and verify that those things have taken place. And as we delved more and more into that, we realised that there's in fact a huge demand for research data in this kind of space. So there's a real vacuum for this. So yes, that was kind of like where the ideas originally came from, basically.
Yeah. So in real life, how are we collecting that data? What year was that?
So the early stage was 2014. We actually founded in 2015, but yes, 2014 and into 2015 was kind of like super, proof of concept kind of phase. And then, we all went full time in 2015.
Okay, and then I'm sure it's been total smooth sailing since then.
Yeah,
right?
of course. Like, yes, no hiccups at all. Yeah.
Well, we can just end the talk right now. We'll go back to art.
Yeah.
No, actually, tell us about that beginning phase and the challenges that you faced.
Yeah, I think one of the things was that we were super early to the market. So, there's a bunch of different compound factors that will feed into this, but in 2015 no one really knew how to consume or use this data, or even kind of like what you meant when you talked about footfall data or geolocation analytics. So combine that with the fact that in order to make sense of this information, you need quite a lot of history associated with it. So in those early days, we were launching our first product, but the reality was that largely the market wasn't ready for it at that time. And so in the early period, we just had quite a long, there was quite a long lead in where we were building stuff, we were building our historical, our data history, but actually in terms of being able to sell it was very, very difficult because we were super early. There was quite a long period where we had to run on a super lean mode. The founders all didn't get paid for over a year, and it was really, really tough, to be honest. But you just got to stick it out, essentially, and go through that. And then gradually, the longer we stuck at it, we managed to raise a small seed round, and gradually the clients came, and with increasing speed, basically.
How did you maintain optimism during that time period to stick it out?
Yeah, I think the co-founders all just had faith, basically. I think it was something that we really wanted to do. We were like a really tight team, and I think, of course there are like there's questions in your mind, but the reality is that that it's all about sticking through the tough times. And basically, there's going to be no startup, or none that I know of, that just have this incredibly easy journey. And so, you're not going to guaranteed to succeed if you stick with it, but you're definitely guaranteed to fail if you give up. So, I think it was just kind of bloody-mindedness and desire to keep going, essentially.
Did you set yourself a deadline? Did you say, by this point, if we haven't gotten to this milestone?
I guess there would always have been some, which would have been just the pure practicality of actually completely running out of money on a personal basis. That would have meant that happened. We weren't at that point yet. I think we were all incredibly determined, and so we didn't have that kind of like, this is the end kind of date. I feel like we'd already passed that, if I'm kind of completely honest, that if we had one of those where we had said, okay, the end point is going to be here, then we undoubtedly would have gone past that deadline. So,
Oh, that's great to hear. So then tell us about how, when you started getting those first customers and you started realizing that your idea was taking true form.
Yeah, I think, those came in a variety of forms, and so lots of our early work was done in the out-of-home industry, out-of-home advertising, and it's funny because when you look back at it, of course, you can build this really consistent story where everything kind of makes sense. But at the time, each of those tiny customers felt like such a massive win. I remember like the first time someone paid us to do some research, and it was a really small amount of money, probably not something we would even do now. But yeah, each time, and as the kind of gravity of those clients grows and the amount of money grows, each time it feels like a kind of new, a new level of win. But that's where it becomes really confirmatory, and you really realise that we are on the right track. We are doing the right things, and those decisions that we've made, start to come good.
Okay. Does the product that you have now bear resemblance to what you had at the beginning, or were there a couple major pivots along the way?
Yeah, I wouldn't say pivot in terms of, there's no pivots in terms of the core technology or really how we're doing that. There was kind of a change in direction in terms of who we perceived the client to be. So in the early days we were providing analytics back to app publishers about the contexts in which their audiences were. So basically, were they traveling or in retail environment? And it was designed so that those app publishers could tailor the experience to those contexts. We now build products which are for use by third parties, and so that has been kind of largely the shift, which has been away from productizing back towards the origin to productizing for kind of another market. But in essence, much of the core kind of technology, etc., is pretty similar.
So looking at the tech underneath, maybe what was the most important component for you as the CTO when you're getting started?
Well, we're kind of, we're very unusual in terms of companies in this space, in that we are completely vertically integrated. That means that we go all the way from collecting the data to processing and productizing that toward, for our clients. So in that, I would say, there's an enormous number of components, basically, from code that sits on, in mobile devices to all the way to, the way in which we process that and surface it on a pretty large scale. So, we're consuming billions of data points a day, so there are lots of different components. I mean, I think very importantly in a small team is to be able to use services that enable you to do a lot with a really small number of people. And I think that has informed lots of the decision making. So largely, wherever possible, we are using tools that mean that we can really focus on doing the clever bit, where we really add insight, where we really add value. We don't have whole teams of DevOps engineers, for example. As much as possible, we're using managed services, and things which make our lives easier or enable us to do, as much as possible with as few as possible people, basically.
Yeah. So you're still running pretty lean. What are your plans for the team when we talk about growth?
So we're still running pretty lean, but we are growing pretty quickly now. So we've been for a number of years, the team size has been kind of fairly steady or growing incrementally, but in the last even in the last few months we've grown by about 100%, not in team size, but as a company, and that that pace is picking up. So I think next year we will probably at least double, potentially more, our headcount. And that's going to be a mix of engineers and sales. But as we become more heavily productized and our market fit is stronger, much more and more of our growth is moving into sales. Whereas early on, in our early days, we were basically all pretty much doing engineering, because there was just that need to build a product, and you needed that history and you needed that data asset in order to be able to make any sales. But now that stuff is there, we're really being able to ramp that product and sales function.
So that's an interesting inflection point from, being more of an engineering organization and then kind of turning on that sales engine. So I'm assuming you're keeping then your engineering team still fairly small. How do you deal with, limited resources as the needs of the customers grow?
Yes, so small but growing, and yeah, of course. Well, I think any organisation has limited resources, and so I think it's really tempting to have this vision, like if we only had more money, if only we had more people. But the reality is that, yeah, you could always have more people. It doesn't matter how big you are, and I think the most important thing is to make the right decisions about what you're focusing on. So, as a tech team, I mean, often I don't even don't mind working in an environment with constrained resources, because I think it just means that you have to be, smarter about what it is that you choose to do. So, yeah, you can never do everything. It's merely a matter of kind of like deciding to pick the most high value, items on the list. And in fact, often, what that can mean is that things that maybe you shouldn't be even doing anyway, you end up not doing, basically. So, yeah, I think, if you have all of the resources you ever need, I think you can end up doing things which are maybe not counterproductive, but certainly which just kind of consume, brain power, the team's energy, and so, yeah.
Yeah, filler activities.
Yeah, exactly. And you're not necessarily being forced to focus on the things that really, really move the needle.
So from an organizational behavior perspective and you as a leader, how do you help, decide on these priorities or make those tough decisions?
Yeah, I mean, principally we are, are they aligned with our strategic vision? So our strategic vision is to become the primary deliverer of these kinds of products in this sector, basically. So a highly productized company that is essentially a SaaS company for geolocation insight, delivering products across a wide range of verticals to thousands of clients. How we choose is basically, so are those things aligned with that vision? And then within that, which ones are ultimately going to be delivering the most value? So we're pretty data driven, as I'm sure you can imagine. And so, we are like estimating, okay, by adding these features or building out these products, we are going to, add this much to our revenue. So it's not a dark art, really, particularly. It's merely picking the thing. It's actually, often reasonably obvious. There can be things where, you have to sink more resource in, with a bit more of a long-term, hope. But by and large, we do that essentially. I wouldn't say it's just common sense, but, largely taking a fairly straightforward view.
So that's an interesting inflection point when you move from being a really eng-heavy org to starting to build up that sales engine. How did you handle that change?
So I think we are kind of like that transition is fairly recent. It's probably even within this year that we have, where the sales function has started to outnumber the engineering function. As I said, in that early phase, it's really important that you just are focused on, well, for us at least, it was about really, really focusing on building that product, making sure the product was, super high grade, really, really effective and really, really useful. And actually, there's all sorts of aspects of things that you need to be doing to do with back testing and so forth. But as you grow up, that balance shifts. And our goal is really to be a SaaS company. We are just focused on building products and being able to have repeatable sales. And as you progress as a startup from being a kind of infant, into being a grown-up SaaS company, those kinds of metrics are really important, especially when you're looking to raise more money. And achieve a better valuation ultimately. So having that ability to have a highly repeatable sales function where, if you want to get, more sales, you literally, you need to add more heads, but essentially you can demonstrate that is a machine. You put more resources into it and you get more sales out. And so, that's been kind of like the transition of the past 12 months or so, which has been moving from a company where, we had some very, very big, very significant sales to some, super large organisations, but they were kind of like lumpy. And so although they demonstrated to us that the demand was really, really strong, they aren't necessarily something that a VC is looking for, which is, incredibly highly repeatable model whereby, where you can demonstrate then, more investment here is going to lead to, more sales there, basically.
So looking ahead, what does the future look like for Huq? What are your next milestones? What's your big 10x goal?
So I think essentially, the last year has been really, really interesting in terms of seeing us really move into the highly productized space in this sector. As I said, we're fairly unusual among companies like us in that we go all the way from collecting the data to building the products on top of it. The 10x goal is completely to see that vision all the way through. So to have products which exist in a wide range of verticals and to be selling those at high volume. Essentially, the play is completely about becoming a highly repeatable, product company. And so lots of that vision will be realised via, the commercial component, essentially through sales. So, okay.
The footfall data and the traffic data definitely changed during COVID. Mm-hmm. Did you jump on that, or?
Yes, certainly. It was a catalyst, for sure. I think what happened in COVID was that lots of those traditional mechanisms of measurement broke down. So things that people had been relying on suddenly no longer worked at all. And so there was for sure, became lots of demand. People are desperate to know, what has happened here, to what extent, is the recovery taking place? Are particular measures being helpful or not helpful? Undoubtedly, I think what had been existing, in the minds of people was suddenly, kind of fully awakened, that they realised that actually this, for many sectors, this is not going to be a luxury or a nice add-on, but really a kind of like necessity in order to understand the nature of, urban centres, travel, all sorts of things.
Mm. Yeah, and how do you see this maybe impacting some larger decisions that are being made in design of cities, or are you thinking that big? Building
for sure.
Sustainability into?
Absolutely, yeah. So lots of our work is now with both regional and national government, and absolutely. This information can be used to help plan, updates to road networks, different, implementations of civic, transport. All of those kinds of things can, be.
That adds that extra good feeling about the work that you're doing, then also giving back while you're planning to expand in multiple verticals. And
absolutely. And we did lots of pro bono stuff for government, etc. during the pandemic. So absolutely. I think it's really important that people can see how this data can be used to build products that genuinely benefit the population.
Data for good.
Mm-hmm.
Are you seeing any challenges there? So public perception of data use, or?
I think there has been. There exist issues in this space. My feeling is that we are going to move to a new a phase in which as people can understand the way in which these kinds of information is built into products, that that value exchange becomes, more accepted. So, yeah, for sure there are challenges, but I think it's like most things, I think it's kind of an era of growing up and becoming more mature, and people understanding that, this is kind of a kind of, that this kind of data can be used in a way that is powerful, and also, protects the privacy of individuals.
Do you see any parallels then to all of your other studies from the beginning, chemistry, art?
Well, yeah, I mean, for sure, like my son, so it was like had a strong mathematical background. And so, of course, that kind of stuff comes in very handy when, looking at large scale data analysis. So, all, things, statistics and lots of those things, from my younger life were, have become, super valuable. I think, in terms of, those other things, I see the way in which you can address challenges within a company as all requiring a lot of creativity. So, in that way of kind of like idea generation or problem solving, I think those are kind of, some of the most important, things that we focus on. And so it doesn't necessarily matter super heavily exactly in which domain those problems occur, but finding creative ways, and lots of the other things we were talking about spirit and sticking with things through their tougher times. Those are definitely applicable across all of those different domains. So
well, it sounds nice that you can infuse that in your technology teams and build that out into your product. So to wrap things up, Isambard, do you have any words of wisdom to those potential founders out there?
I mean, I would say probably, exercise as much resilience as possible. So that means, often you're going to have to stick through periods where you're not necessarily getting the results you hope for immediately. But I think, the number one thing is like to show tenacity in those phases. And at that time, it's really important. I think the rapid pivot is like kind of overplayed, but like I think it is really important to listen to what's going on, to use all of the kind of skills at your disposal in order to, don't become blindsided. And I think that, that is really easy, especially as a small group of founders, to kind of drink the Kool-Aid or, convince yourselves that you're all on the right track. So it is important to listen, but it's also important to just really stick with it, even when those times do get really tough, because that is the time where the people that give up, that's when it stops. And basically, if you can push through that period beyond the time where most people may be willing to give up, then I think that is has enormous positive implications for your chances of success.
Thank you for sharing, and congratulations that you made it through that point. And although I'm sure there will be other struggles ahead, it looks like some great application of your technology. And thank you for being here today, sharing all of that insight with us.
Thanks, Emily, for having me. It's been really lovely.
And the next time we do this, we'll be in a local pub, and we'll catch up on how things have developed since we talked.
Great, I look forward to it.
Me too. Well, thanks again for sharing your startup story, and until next time. Ciao.